And this is the kind of stuff that people just aren't ready for, is next level technology. And I realize that when I talk to people, that everybody's still living 50 years ago. And then you add that to companies, trying to talk you into eating fake meat that they made, just make the meat unavailable. And these are all just excuses to control people. Like Henry Kissinger said, we'll use food as a weapon. And I believe someone else in the Bolshevik Revolution also said the same thing. And then by the time Stalin came around, they were literally starving people out just because they had an empty belly and no nutrition.
Inflation in the U.S. will climb between 6 and 9% by year's end, said Steve Hanke, who served on Ronald Reagan's Council of Economic Advisors. Said the rapid growth in money supply, work fueling asset prices. But the negative side to this, the rise in inflation in 2021 has been caused 100% by growth of the money supply. When inflation spikes, commodities like gold, silver, lumber, real estate have historically surged. Learn how simple it is to add physical gold and silver to your portfolio ahead of the rise in inflation and predicted price rises. Patriot Gold Group has a no-fee-for-life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA. Call 1-800-356-4470 and get a free investor guide today. And the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 5 years in a row from 2016 until present. Click the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video. I'm going to go back and make a huge, bold call here. The amount of change coming up with starvation of a society and the shift of an age, you need to look at the Byzantine Empire. This is the amount of change and collapse we're moving into. Forget the Romans, Byzantine Empire.
And I think I sent you this about all of the Sahara dust blowing over here. It wasn't that long ago that the volcano was spitting up stuff in the other direction, right? And then here's the answer back, it seems like. But this aside, you were talking about Brazil along with us. And when you were talking about those carryover numbers, you could look at those same countries I was talking about, and you'll find out that those are the ones that also have the large stockpiles of backup food for companies, for government, etc. But when all of that's gone, it's kind of like what was going on with the meat. Now, maybe you can explain this to me, because I watched like 3 hours worth of it and still couldn't figure out exactly what they were blaming our beef shortage on. They kept talking about how the hackers hacked into them, which caused all of these other problems, which caused a big reduction in the amount of beef that we were about to have. It's not just like the grain, it's the beef. But how can hackers hacking something cause beef shortage in real life? I mean, the cows are out there, they're eating, they're oblivious to the fact that they got hacked. Is the company just not feeding them? Or is it like before when they were just destroying the beef so that they could claim insurance on it and things like that, and then also say that, hey, they don't have enough to bring to market now?
All of the above. No, the hack is a convenient excuse, and I am going to go woo-woo here. It's convenient that, I'll give a specific example. Up in North Dakota, they were talking about the regular auctioneers, but because there's such a drought going on and water is being incredibly rationed on the industrial level, including agriculture for vegetables, but it also goes over into the cattle ranching, that the average sales for this particular week over the last 30 years has been 400 head of cattle that will come into auction for slaughter. This week, it's almost 5,000. And the reason is the drought's intensifying to the point where they can't even get enough water at a cost to keep their cows alive. Forget the feed. Just to buy the water to push it into so the cows can drink water to stay alive. So they can't even afford to keep the herds watered. Now, that's a huge statement. Okay, getting them hay, which is, over here in the east part of the country, the hay is just, it's the best hay they've had in at least 2 cuts this year. Everything is growing so incredibly well here now. But up in places like in the West where they're having a drought, they got no hay, they got no water, there's no feed. Corn's getting really, really, really expensive. So if you're going to try to feed your animals using a grain supply, you're getting priced out already, because look at the prices of everything. Soybeans at $13. Almost every grain that you're looking at, wheat, corn, soy, is at near all-time record highs. Now, I don't care if you're going to feed press cake to your cows off a soy meal run, or if you're going to do, processed grain residuals, distillations and whatnot. Even if you're going to ferment that and feed it to the cows, you're getting so priced out of the market that it's barely even a break even if you're going to feed them with grain now, because the grain costs too much at record prices. Now add in record water prices and record hay prices. These cows, they can't be held anymore. The running cost on putting a cow right now is about 3x more than what you're going to sell it for. So you're going to lose 2x more money than you put into the cow. So let's say to buy the feed and whatnot, it's going to cost you $3,000. You're going to get $1,000 for the cow, because they're all selling the herds because they can't keep them. It's too expensive. And just magically, there's a meat hack, which slowed down production of the meat hack slowed the production of the sales from the auction houses out there. Anybody who likes cattle auctions, Corbett Wall, his guy's name is Corbett, Corbettwallo. He's the best out there. He runs a place called DV Auctions, and you can find him on YouTube every day. He'll run you down on all the cattle pricing, all the hog pricing, and take you through the full meat industry. And by far, he's my number one source that I go to take a look at what's happening on the cattle front. But he's down around Oklahoma in that mid-Texas area. But he'll get you all the way up to North Dakota. There is such a constraint on production for anything in animal husbandry due to crop price record pricing right now. Even if you want to get chicken scratch, it comes from grain somewhere. And with grain prices being all-time high, the chicken feed's at an all-time high too. It used to be like $5 for a 30-pound bag, or you can, if you went to the farm co-op and you'd be able to buy with somebody else. Even that's coming into the prices where people, I hear guys, farmers talking in the grain co-op, because I go in there a lot and I buy seed. There's no iron peas this year. There's no beans. The peas are gone. You can't even pre-order anything. I mean, even me as a guy who has a small farm is looking for like cover crop of iron peas and beans. They don't have anything. It's unbelievable. And I hear these guys complaining, talking about how expensive the chicken's feed's getting. I'm like, chicken feed, dude, that's the lowest price stuff you can possibly get. It doesn't get any cheaper than chicken scratch. When chicken farmers are talking about how expensive it is to get their chicken feed in there now, and you want to compare that with somebody who's raising cattle, are you kidding me? That's such a night and day difference. Cattle versus chicken. I mean, the inputs there are just monstrously different on those two animals. We are going into a massive shortage of beef. If you're not raising your own cattle, if you're not raising your own meat product, you're not going to get it. It's getting too expensive for the farmers, because the auction houses are still stuck at paying a certain price, because the onward slaughterhouses are going to only pay a certain price. And then they're gouging you, the end customer, who's paying double or triple for any kind of meat that you did last year. And it's this whole circle jerk going around on locked in pricing. So I don't know where it leaves everybody, except, you know what, if you're listening to this broadcast, you need to prepare yourself. We're coming into some real difficult situations for not only growing the crops and getting them in the ground. And I'm going to rant on a tangent here. Now, stranding, just simple words about stranding means you grow, like let's say you grow a field of corn, or you grow a field of soybeans, or you grow a field of canola. And it grew and you replanted, like now, the same scenario, and then it was growing and you were planning to harvest it, but early snow came in and it kept snowing and it got cold and it kept snowing and it might have melted, and then your field was too muddy to go in and harvest it, and then it snowed and it turned to winter and everything iced over. Well, you didn't get a chance to harvest your field, but it's going to stay there. It's going to be frozen the whole winter. And then finally, in the springtime, when it dries out enough for you to get your tractor in there and your combines in, or whatever you're using to harvest that, you can get some sort of harvest out of it. They call that stranded. So when you look at how many crops are stranded or how much acreage is stranded, you got the 25% last year is not a good strand rate. You know, how do you strand 25% of the crops in the ground and say, oh, well, and then here's the USDA with their fake numbers. They counted that as booked yield. I mean, they counted it as the farmer went in and cut it with their combine, dried it out, put it into the bags in full tonnage, and then weighed that out. They just did an average on how many acres were left, and the stranded crop got counted as good count. And see, this is why I say a lot of the numbers with the USDA doesn't make sense, because 25% of the crops are stranded in the canola crop. I'm going to use canola as a specific example, and like places like Alberta. 25% of their entire crop last year was stranded, meaning that they got rocked out and their entire crop was lost due to a very late freeze. Took everything down to zero. They all replanted, but then they couldn't get the harvest in before the snows and the ice came again. That thing had to overwinter the entire winter, and then when it got back in the spring after the winter, that was almost a total loss. They're only getting 10%, but the USDA booked in a full 25%. Like they're putting 100% of stranded crops as yield coming in, but really the numbers are something like 10%. So this explains why, A, there had to be a meat hack on the computer system. They had to slow down the meat processing somehow. B, record crop pricing is locking in and farmers can't, they're selling everything at record price lows now because they just have to sell their herds. There's no way to keep them. But those herds, once they're sold, that's it. There's no more herd coming back. It takes 2 years to bring herds back. So where does that leave us with meat pricing, hogs, chickens at all-time high for the feed price? So now what? Like you can see where this is going, and then the actual crops in the ground to keep that whole system moving in the beginning, we're back to the baseline where it's going below what we produce is what we eat. Like this is a serious, serious problem we're heading into, and nobody's talking about it. And you have to stand outside of your supermarket, and you can only buy this much, and you're rationed to one, you're rationed to two, and the way they retrain the society, you can see exactly what's happening on how this is working. We're coming into the food dearth, we're coming into the food shortages, we're coming into all this, and it's dovetailing and overlayering, and if you can't see these two are related, and the world's moving to this point right now, there's got to be a bigger distraction, Ransom.
I'm right on track with you. And kind of before you went off into all of those different games that are played to reduce the number of products that come out in an artificial way. And then on top of it, there's natural things going on. But, you know, you're talking about all the water, you know, how California is dumping 70% of their fresh water. And then they're talking about they're in a drought and they can't grow crops. And, you know, if they have beef out there in California at all, they're probably having trouble with watering it. But then the state's dumping all the fresh water out into the ocean.
They're squawking about all the Sierra Nevada snowpack melting. Okay, great. It goes into reservoirs. But then you're right. They're opening all the floodgates and just emptying all that water into the ocean and leaving nothing for the farmers. And they're claiming it's a drought. Well, wait a second. That's an artificial drought if there ever was one. Because those reservoirs were at the normal levels they were after the snowpack melted. Now, what happened to all the water?
You know, you say it's a little bit woo-woo about everybody getting used to, you know, rations and waiting outside the store. But then, you know, all of these 3D printing meat factories, they're going to get people used to having fake meat that they grew in a lab because that way they can control the exact portions. And this is the kind of stuff that people just aren't ready for, is next level technology. And I realize that when I talk to people that everybody's still living 50 years ago. The amount of technology is so far beyond what we're even talking about. We shouldn't have any of these problems. And then you add that to companies, you know, trying to talk you into eating fake meat that they made, just make the meat unavailable. And these are all just excuses to control people. Like Henry Kissinger said, we'll use food as a weapon. And I believe someone else in the Bolshevik Revolution also said the same thing. And then by the time Stalin came around, they were literally starving people out just because they had an empty belly and no nutrition. So yeah, you can put all of these things together. And I think people are really naive, and they're in denial that we're in such a sophisticated technological future, and also the same reality that they're pulling the plug on civilization as we know it. And I hate to sound gloom, but that's just really what I think.
Yeah, we're being set for a reset here. But think about the body's electric field. If you're going to talk about all those cables running through the clothes, because you've seen it from Logan's Run all the way to Star Trek, they always wear those kind of one-piece body suits, and it doesn't matter what futuristic sci-fi movie you're in, they always have that. But think about the body electric field, how that would be affected. And then what kind of metals would be involved in the production of that? If they don't have enough silver right now to continue to produce the chips that are needed for the semiconductor chips, I mean, what kind of constituents or what base commodity is going to be used in the production of that clothes? Like, you're talking about putting a fiber optic cable. I mean, how much high tech is that going to be to run it at that thread thin level there to weave it in the clothes? You know, it's such a, yeah, nanu, right? Even Mork from Ork or whatever guy living in Colorado, was that Robin Williams, the guy that did that TV show back in the day? Again, he was always wearing that one piece thing too. So what is it about that one piece bodysuit that it's everything futuristic? Are they really tracking everything?
You know, we laugh at that, but every show I watch now, and I don't usually watch TV, but lately I've been doing it. And we started a new show on Amazon, in which like the second or third episode is a futuristic dystopic society where the autofac is what they call it, but really it's Amazon. And it's funny that it's on Amazon talking about Amazon. And in the future, the autofac just keeps sending products to people, even though they don't need it. And it continues to, you know, soil the earth and pollute and take up more and more space with products and factories. And the people don't even want the products anymore. It's long after we killed ourselves with nuclear weapons, and the remnants of society are sitting there getting Amazon deliveries all day. It used to be sci-fi predicting the future. Now it's the past that sci-fi is pretending is in the future.